Welcome back to Help My Business is Growing, a podcast where we explore how to grow and build a business that is healthy and sustainable. I'm your host, Kathy Svetina. Today we're going to be talking about business innovation. And usually people think about innovation as just bringing something new into the market. But you're going to see in this conversation that I had with Michael Haynes about how does this really look like in a small business space, and that innovation is not just bringing new things in the market, it also encompasses other things as well. So, Michael Haynes is a small business growth specialist. His focus and passion is on empowering CEOs of service based companies to acquire B2B clients and achieve the growth and impact they seek through business innovation and sales. We're going to be talking about topics such as what actually is innovation, how do you innovate, and most importantly, how do you figure out what you should be focusing on through listening through your customers' needs. And how do you make this actionable? How do you actually do it? How do you listen to your customers? And how do you really grow and innovate in your company? So, join me as Michael and I talk about the topic of business innovation in a B2B space. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Kathy.
We're going to be talking about an important topic for growing business, and that's innovation. And people, when they hear innovation, they usually think about something that either has to do with technology or something that's really completely revolutionary. But you look at innovation differently. So I would like to get your definition of innovation, what it is, and why is it important for a business, especially for a small business and for a growing business?
So first of all, innovation. So for particularly within the context of small and medium businesses, and really for all businesses, but for small medium businesses, you need to think about innovation in terms of business innovation, or sometimes I refer to as cross-functional innovation. And by innovation, we're talking about making new introductions and or improvements into your business. Okay, and now when you're innovating, making those improvements and or introductions, that can be things that are just incremental, new to your company. They could be things that are new to your industry that you're adopting within your company, or it could be approaches, strategies, new things that you're adopting from other industries, other markets as well.
And how does innovation differ from B2B, the business to business, and from innovation in B2C, from the business to consumer? Is there any difference there?
So there's really no difference really in terms of innovation B2B versus B2C. In terms of when we're talking about business innovation, so looking really holistically across your company, there are 5 kinds of business innovation that you really should be considering if you are going to be able to grow your business and also to maintain relevancy for the market. So first off is product innovation, which is what a lot of people think about in terms of making, improvements to your product line, to your current products. You might have a product extension. You might add some new product offerings. So that's often one area of innovation. The second is service innovation. So you're making introductions to the kinds of services. You might provide additional training services. For example, talking in the context of service-based firms, you might have some additional services around providing advisory services, consulting services. You might do potentially some market research services to provide to your peers in your industry. So there's service improvements. There can be service innovations also when we think about from a service and support perspective in improving the kinds of service and support, the assistance, the customer experience that you provide. So that's another form of service innovation. There also can be organizational innovation. Organizational innovation, which is something I strongly believe all small and medium-sized businesses looking to try and grow should be considering. And these are things like joint ventures, strategic alliances, partnerships, collaboration. So that collaboration, co-creation, which you may want to be doing with other relevant service providers. So for example, let's say you're a marketing agency that provides branding, marketing strategy solutions. You may want to partner with an IT firm to be able to provide that holistic marketing technology services. So you can provide a holistic suite of services around, let's say, data analytics, marketing automation, for example. So working with another service provider in order that you can be meeting that broader customer need. So that's organizational innovation. Then there can be potentially process innovation, where you're looking at what kinds of new processes and or systems you can be implementing into your organization. And then finally, there's marketing innovations. So marketing innovation are what kinds of new marketing strategies and tactics that you can be implementing in your organization, again, to help you, again, to build and grow your business. Now, when we're talking in a B2B context, there are some specific B2B strategies that might be quite appropriate that you may want to be considering as part of your innovation and your growth strategies. So those are the 5 kinds of business innovations that businesses should be considering in terms of how they're going to make those new introductions and or improvements in their organization. One final point I'd like to make, Kathy, is that the underlying driver in determining what areas that you want to be business innovating, it's all going back to in response to your industry, customer, and buyer needs. That's the driver that's going to be determining where you should be. What are those of those 5 innovation types? What are the types that you want to be innovating?
This is a great blueprint. And I haven't told you this before, but I did read your book, Listen, Innovate, Grow. And I absolutely love it because it gives a blueprint of each of these, asks questions of how you're actually doing all of these. And I know that this is only an hour show, but what I would like to do is if someone's looking at across all these processes and across all of these 5 levels of innovation, how would that look like for a smaller business? How would you identify which one should you start with first? And how would that process look like for someone who wants to innovate but has no idea where to start?
Okay, so the first thing you need to be doing is listening. So that is step number 1. And you need to be listening on 3 levels. First of all, is what I call listening to you. So you as that SME business leader, looking at yourself as a business leader, looking at your firm, your company, what are your goals? In your vision, what are you trying to achieve? So, what are your ambitions for the company? That's number 1. As part of that as well, looking at, well, where have you had success? So understanding, what is the sources in terms of who are your clients and customers, your core customers that are giving you a large amount of your revenue, a large amount of your business, those that are your big advocates. So really having an understanding of your strengths in terms of the clients and customers, what sorts of products and services are you providing? So where are you winning? What clients, what products and services are you providing? If you're a company that operates across different regions, different markets, are there particular regions, particular markets that you're having success in? So really have an understanding of where are you winning, where are you having success? And then trying to then think in alignment in terms of your goals, because that's going to start to give you some clarity as to which clients and which regions and markets to focus on. So that's 1, is listening to you. Then you need to be doing what is called having an understanding of those industry verticals that you're currently serving and as well want to serve, making sure that you have an understanding, where are they at right now? What are the trends? What are their expectations? What are their requirements? What are they needing? Because that's also, again, help tell you, what you need to be doing, where you need to be focusing on within your business. And then thirdly, you need to gain an in-depth understanding of your customers, your clients and customers, both the current customers that you have, for which you should start with those core customers, those strategic accounts, those which are the ones that account for a large proportion of your revenues, as well as those that you feel could significantly help take your business to the next level. I often call those the strategic accounts, those key strategic clients where you may not be doing a lot of business with them today, but there's a potential to do a large amount of business with them, and they can really help set you on that trajectory by getting larger contracts, more revenues, which also may potentially help you get other clients as well. So doing that listening, for which there are a variety of ways of how you can do that listening, but doing that listening in terms of yourself, listening to you as the owner, the company, listening to the market, those industries and geographic markets that you're serving, and then having understanding of your customers. Doing that listening on those 3 levels will give you clarity as to where you need to be focusing in order to acquire, retain clients, and grow your business. So it'll help you be very clear by having that understanding in terms of which industries, which geographic markets, and which customers you should be focusing on, where you will put your efforts around innovation and growth.
So essentially what you're doing is you're doing a lot of market research on these 3 different levels to see how you're going to take the company forward to that goal that you're trying to achieve. And what I would like to hear from you is, when it comes to doing the market research and listening to your customers, how would one go and approach that? Would you be doing surveys with them? Would you be doing like a one-on-one conversation with them? How does that look like in practice?
Okay, so in terms of listening to customers, there is a number of ways in which you can be listening to your customers, because it's all about really trying to understand what are their priorities, what are their needs, what are their expectations. Now, in business to business, when we're talking about listening to the customer, we really have to go not just listening to the customer as the organization. So let's say, for example, you're an IT firm that provides, consulting advisory services, let's say
Mhm.
into financial services. You're an SME but provides IT services to financial services companies. You are going to not just target, let's say, for example, Bank of America. You're not just going to be thinking about targeting, understanding. We need to understand Bank of America, that the organization, in terms of its priorities, where it's at. But we need to understand the particular buyers, the decision makers. So you need to identify who within Bank of America, and let's say there might be a particular IT transformation team, let's say within Bank of America. We need to understand who are those decision makers that are going to be responsible for bringing in potentially your IT companies. We need to understand who those individuals are. We need to understand what their priorities and their objectives are, and also how they make their decisions. So, how you build that understanding around your customers at the organizational level and at the customer level, you do it through a variety of ways. First thing, in terms of understanding the organization, often, going on the company websites is often a good source of information. We can go on the company website. Often they will have, particularly if you're targeting larger organizations, they will have an about section where we'll talk about the team, the organization, where you can see the organizational chart, so you can get an understanding of who are the roles and titles of who you need to be approaching. Quite often, some organizations may also have presentations as well, annual reports, planning presentations, which will help you understand what are the needs, priorities, and objectives of that organization. LinkedIn is a great source to understand both at an organizational level. You can go on the business page on LinkedIn to understand what the company is all about. And often on the LinkedIn page, there will also be, you can click through to employees, and you can click on to the appropriate roles and titles. So you can get a background to understand those decision makers in terms of what are their priorities, from what perspective are they coming, how do they approach things. So let's say you are targeting the head of IT within that financial services firm, the Bank of America, but that person has a strong finance background that you can see. That will be a clue to you that you're going to have to be mindful in terms of when you're having discussions and interactions, that really bringing things from that financial lens will be quite important. So LinkedIn will also be a very good source as well to help build some of that
Mhm.
broad understanding. That's one form of research that you're going to be wanting to do. But then you're definitely, where possible, you really want to be really talking to and really engaging and having discussions with those decision makers directly. And that could be done through, you might do potentially through depth interviews. It's often where you're having one-on-one discussions with those executive level buyers to really understand their needs, priorities, what are their objectives. That's often quite useful. So that's a starting point. There are other approaches that you can use as well in terms of understanding what decision makers are after, in terms of doing client workshops with some of your current clients, doing workshops where you're bringing in some of those cross-functional decision makers from the organization, bringing in representatives of your department from your company as well. So what I call strategic customer client workshop, and it's all about it's about gaining information, understanding of their needs, priorities, but also sharing of information on what's going on. So that's also a way that can be used as well to understand the needs of those decision makers. So starting off with some of the online research. So to recap again, starting off with some of that online research, going onto the company websites, leveraging the likes of LinkedIn to really gain an understanding of some of the needs, the priorities, objectives, and then where you can have opportunities to have engaged in discussions, which might be depth interviews. It could be those strategic customer workshops, are just two. I've had other clients that have done things like set up client advisory boards where you get a panel of some of your key clients that you meet with periodically to exchange information, both what you're doing within your company, within your SME, and you're exchanging and understanding what's going on within their organization. That is also a really great way in terms of building understanding in terms of what's going on in the company, what are the priorities, what they need, again, to get that depth of listening.
These are great ideas on how to do that, especially using LinkedIn. I'm a huge proponent of using LinkedIn for all this type of research, and I love using it. The question that I have for you here is, if you are a B2B and you're not exactly targeting businesses that are large, that have this wealth of information on them online, how would you go about doing this type of research? If you're a B2B business that is targeting smaller B2B businesses, would the process of this research and market listening look a little bit different? How would that look like? Or is it going to be the same?
So even if you're an SME, small, medium-sized business, and you're targeting other small, medium-sized businesses, you definitely are going to be starting to do online research will definitely be your first port of call. Hopefully they will have a website in which you can go onto their website again to get an understanding around who are the decision makers, what are their priorities, what are they focusing on, what are they trying to achieve. So spending some time and doing some review of what's going on to the website, looking at the news and events page, looking at any presentations, what do they provide about background around the leadership team. So company website will be a good port of call as a first starting point in terms of understanding what's going on with those small, medium-sized businesses. Your industry and professional associations, which is what I forgot to mention earlier, industry and professional associations often can really give you a great source of insight to help you gain an understanding of what's going on with respect to within your industry, what are some other companies doing. So definitely your industry and professional associations, and that might be through their publications that they have. They may have regular publications which often feature what's going on in the industry. They may be hosting events like webinars, in-person events, online events. Really going to those is a great way to really build your network, build an understanding of what's going on within the target industry. So your industry and professional association is something I highly recommend that all small, medium-sized businesses really make sure that for their target industry that they really consider gaining some interactions with and be getting membership of, so they can get access to those publications, be able to get those webinars. They may also have podcasts as well themselves that you can listen to, which are great sources of insight. So company website as well as industry and professional associations are two ways of building that understanding around some of your smaller businesses that you're going to be looking to approach.
Another one I love, it's podcasting. And I mean, and this is what this podcast is about too. It's about listening to the market and actually getting the feedback and figuring out what are the businesses really need that you can help them with. And podcasting is a great tool for that. So you've done all the listening, you've identified your market, you figure out where your problems are, and now you can innovate, right? That's the process. Listen and then innovate, right?
Yes, so that's exactly right, Kat. So once you've done that listening, so you've done some internal workshopping with
Mm-hmm.
within your team to really understand what are the goals, the priorities, and the focus of your company. You've listened through the market research, online research, hopefully talking to some of your clients and customers and prospects. Then it's really about taking all of those learnings, and you're probably going to want to workshop them internally with your team to really understand what are the priorities of your clients and customers. And again, first, when you're pulling all of this information together, all these sources of insights, particularly from a customer level, then you really want to be looking at, again, starting off with your core customers. So those key customers that are really going to be accounting a large part of your revenues, those strategic clients that maybe you only have a small bit of spend now, but you want to gain more penetration because it can really move the dial on your business. Really starting there and really focusing and understanding based on looking at those core customers or core growth potential customers and understanding what are the gaps and what are some of the gaps that they're seeing based on what are their needs. Is it around some of your product, which could be your around your offerings? Is it around your processes? And seeing what are the gaps are, and then how are you going to fill those gaps? That's where the innovating comes in. So for example, if to be used, I'll use one of my clients. So I have a client in Canada, in Ottawa, is an insurance brokerage firm, and they provide niche insurance offerings to some distinct industry sectors. They identified through their research, through talking to some of their key clients, and also through some of the industry associations. So they did, some direct customer interviews, as well as some of the industry association research. They identified that there was a need within some professions for some very specific tailored insurance type solutions. So what they ended up doing as part of one of their key growth strategies was product innovation in terms of creating some new insurance solutions or bundles that have some specific elements of what particularly, dentists and funeral homes are two of their industry sectors. And they came up with insurance package offerings very tailored to meet the needs of what dentists and what funeral home directors were looking for. So that's just one example of, doing that listening, identifying there's a gap in the market, and then they identified in terms of product innovation what they needed to do.
And how does that fit into their whole strategic plan? When I'm working with the businesses and what I'm interested in it, how do you fit this innovation process? And there is a process around it. How do you fit into the strategic planning initiative that you can have in your company and you should have in your company if you don't have it? Is there a specific process that you would go through to make room for that innovation type of thinking? Are you doing listening on a regular basis so that you already have like a repository of ideas that you should be innovating? Or are you specifically saying every year we're going to be doing this exercise so that we can fit it into a strategic initiative? How do you balance that?
In terms of your strategic planning process, you should have a strategic planning process, which I think, given the environment we're in right now and given the high level of volatility, I think it's important to have an annual process, but you want to have a regular, what I call review and reset, where you're reviewing and seeing what's going on and making your changes accordingly, given there's a lot of volatility, uncertainty that's occurring right now. So you want to have your strategic planning process set. And then in terms of the listening is something that should be done on a fairly regular basis, because you want to be, and again, there are a variety of tools for which, we probably could do a whole podcast in terms of the different sources of listening that you can be getting, leveraging feedback from your front of house teams, having regular client account meetings, etc. But you want to set up your strategic planning process and having a process for the strategy development and regular review. And you also want to be building in your process for your getting that customer insights for that listening. So, and your listening, you want to have some listening to be done in alignment with your strategic planning process. So let's say your main strategic planning is going to be occurring in, let's say, September. Then you want to be making sure that a month or so before that you have gone through some of your listening exercise of making sure you've gone through, what's the latest publication from the industry associations. Making sure you've had some meetings with some of those core key clients so that you have an up-to-date understanding of the needs. So that the listening that you're getting from the industries, through your industry and your markets, from your customers, can feed into your strategic planning process. And your strategic planning process, as part of your strategic planning, it should be identifying, as part of your overall strategy, where are some of the key areas that you're going to be looking to be working on. So that whole innovation of where we're going to innovate, that should be built in as part of your strategic plan based on, again, you're going to have that listening, which is going to tell you what are some of the gaps and priorities, particularly around some of those key clients and markets that you're going to be serving. Having identified those needs, then you can then build in your innovation planning process to say what are going to be some of the key innovation initiatives we'll be working on. So you need to have your process and your timings for your listening, which should align up with your strategic planning process. And inherent within your strategic planning process should be around your innovation planning, where you say what key projects and initiatives you're going to be working on in alignment with customer needs as part of your innovation and your growth strategy.
And I would assume that this is where the product and the service innovation comes in, because you've identified, you listen to the market, you have the strategic process in place, and now you can say these are the new products and the new services that we can offer to the businesses, the other B2B businesses, to support them better. And it's driven by the data, right? Everything is driven by data.
Exactly. Everything is driven by data. Everything is driven by that listening. What are we hearing in terms of from the industry, from our customers, from those decision makers? Yes, everything is insight data driven. Absolutely.
So right now in this process, we have listened to the market, we have identified the opportunities, We have figured out that we're either going to have a new product or a new service. We have innovated there. And now we have to market that. This is where the marketing innovation comes in.
Exactly. So a marketing innovation in terms of how you're going to be going to market, and now how you go to market with those products and services, how you're going to market to them, it very much in the B2B context needs to be very much buyer driven. So this is why that listening and understanding who are the decision makers within those clients and customers that you're currently serving, wanting to serve. We need to know who they are. We need to know, what are their priorities, but we need to know how they buy. So what are the activities as part of their decision making process? Business decision makers typically, in this, one of the key changes actually that has occurred is that businesses decision makers are doing a lot more independent research, and so they will use a variety of sources as part of their independent research when they are looking to buy. So they may be talking to colleagues, they may be looking at case studies, they may look at white papers. In an IT context, they may want free trials, demonstrations. So it's by understanding who those decision makers are and what constitutes their buying decision process and who is involved will determine what are your marketing activities. So if, for example, if we use an IT example, and let's say they're very big on client references, third-party reviews, and I'm going to say demonstrations, for example, then you know that in terms of your marketing activities, because your marketing activities in a B2B context need to be aimed at the decision makers, you're going to be having those key activities and those kinds of content. So making sure that you're visible on third-party review sites, setting up a client reference program so that your prospects can talk to one or two of your customers. If they're looking at white papers, for example, if they read articles through industry publications, then you want to be writing those articles and making sure that they're featured within those industry associations. So it's all about making sure you're providing the kinds of tools that your decision makers use and you are visible where your buyers seek for information.
Yeah, and what I've seen lately for the last couple of years, the B2B buyers have usually gone to Gartner and other, sources of information, but now is more shifted towards the getting that insight from their network. How, and this is where the influencers come in as well, I think. So how have you seen that shift coming from, the one source of authority of where you get that type of information when you need help to more of a networked approach of asking your other peers, your other colleagues in the market, where would they solve that particular problem? What have you seen?
So business decision makers are using a variety of sources. I think the latest stats are they will use 5 to 7 sources of information before they want to speak to any sales representative within your company. So they will have done a lot of their decision making, distilling, working down to the shortlist before wanting to talk to you. So it's all about finding out who and what are the go-tos for your target clients and customers. So are they going to, and this is again where that listening, that research comes in. Is it the industry and associations? Are there certain events, certain publications that they go to? Are there certain podcasts that they're listening to? Are there certain revered subject matter experts, the influencers, in terms of those subject matter experts that are looked upon within their industry, which could be people within the industry and professional associations? They're the ones that might be writing certain articles for certain publications, magazines. They may be doing certain podcasts, hosting certain events. So you do want to identify who those people are, and those people you do want to approach to see how you can collaborate and work with them, either by doing a guest, if it's a case of a blogger or podcaster, being a guest on that blog or on that podcast. You might co-create and do some sort of joint event with them, quite often as an example. So how you can work and collaborate with them to get that reach and visibility and credibility amongst your peers. So it's really about identifying who are they talking to, what are they reading, whose opinions are they relying on. That will really determine where you focus your efforts. And in terms of those influencers, again, it's who's looked upon as the go-tos. And in a B2B context, it's often people that 99% of the population will have no clue who they are, but they know because you're dealing with, civil engineering solutions,
Yep.
this particular person who is the authority, who has been writing in the civil engineering magazine on a regular basis, who has this podcast, who present at certain events. Well, it's those events, those podcasts that where you want to be making yourself visible so that you can be working with that particular go-to, that influencer, to gain their credibility and also to get reach into their audience, into their world, because they are the ones that decision makers are going to.
Of all these tactics, have you seen anything that works really particularly well, or does it really depend on your industry and from company to company?
Yeah, it really depends from industry to industry what's going to work best. And depending on who your decision makers are, where do they go for information? Again, your marketing strategy, your go to market strategy is going to need to involve a variety of sources of content channels because your decision makers are doing lots of research. So it's really about, again, understanding who are those decision makers and what are the kinds of things that they look at, because you're going to need to have probably 3 to 5, I'm going to put sources in terms of where they're going for information. So they may go on social media. They may be going through those industry and professional associations. There might be certain events that they may be at. Some folks may want to be able to access third-party reviews. It could be all about your testimonials and case studies. So it's really understanding what your target decision makers use and then modify accordingly. Third-party reviews are becoming increasingly important and relevant, particularly in the likes of professional services within the technology space as well in particular. So third-party reviews, I've seen with my own clients and my own business network, client
Mhm.
reference. So quite often I've had to give references, and I've seen other clients of mine where they've had to provide references and obtain references. So client references, case studies are two things, and third-party reviews are three tactics that I have seen, particularly again from a professional service industry perspective, that I have seen that become far more relevant and important.
I would like to bring this into a specific case where you've seen a client implement that in their business, and how did it look like for them? How did that marketing innovation look like for them that it was really successful? Is there an example that you can give us?
So marketing innovation, what we talk in terms of, well, I'm going to use an example of advocacy marketing. So in terms of advocacy marketing, there is, I'm going to use my insurance client again in Canada, who set up an advocacy marketing program. So your advocacy marketing program is all about getting your clients and customers, those that really, they really love you. They just think that you're the bee's knees, you're just over the top. Is having those clients to serve on your behalf in terms of helping you to really demonstrate the value you can provide to your target customers that you're trying to pursue. So in terms of my insurance client, they did a number of things. So they co-created content with them. The insurance company had an annual client event each year, bringing in various of their insurance clients across some of the key niches that they operate in. And they had a couple of their core clients really speak on their behalf, talking about, some of those specific industry solutions that the company developed for them and how it really helped them within their own businesses. So yeah, they had them speaking at their events. There was some co-creating of content as well. And some of those advocates as well also served as client references for them, which they could call upon when they were trying to bring on some larger, new, bigger clients. So that's just one example of where identifying a pool of strong advocates and then using them in terms of creating some content, being part of their client reference program, and then also speaking at some of their key events to really demonstrate and really give a firsthand, authentic recount of how this company has been able to benefit them.
That's a great example. Thank you for that. I always like to see that in practice. How does it look like? I think it brings what we've been talking about really up to life, how you can actually implement that in a business. And when we were talking about this, one thing that really stuck out the most is this content co-creation, and either with your clients or with the partners that you collaborate with. And we already talked about a lot of different ways how you can do that. Why do you think that works so well that it does?
So co-creating content with your clients is extremely valuable, I think, for a number of reasons. One, when you're co-creating content with clients as well as potential prospects, it's a good way for you to be able to build a relationship and gain an understanding. If it's a prospect, it's a way for you to really further understand and start to build that relationship with them. If it's one of your current clients, it's a way to, I guess, further really cement and build that relationship. It can definitely serve as a win-win for both your organization as well as that client prospect, because your clients and prospects, they're often looking to build their reach, their credibility, building their own brand. And so co-creating content allows them to do so, to gain that credibility, that authority, gain that reach. So it can be quite useful there. And it's also a way of really providing some grassroots, tangible examples and content that's really going to be very live and real for your target audience. So when you're creating content, you're doing a podcast interview, for example, with one of your prospects, and being able to draw on, sort of like you just did now, in terms of drawing on some live examples, getting that recount of what are some of your challenges, your experience, and how you've addressed things, being able to really get that from the coal face, from a client's perspective, really adds a lot of value and helps bring everything far more to life for your prospective customer. So it's a win-win in terms of building relationships, gaining more insight, and really kind of delivering value and how you can educate and really demonstrate relevancy to your clients and prospects.
So, would you say that in the B2B market, what really stands out these days is education? Education first and selling is the second?
Yes, it's very much around, I would say it's definitely around education, but it needs to be around education. But I also would put a caveat on that. It needs to be very much focused around what I call sense making and road mapping.
Okay.
There's lots of content out there. And over the past 18 months, I think we've all been inundated with content because, everyone was working remotely. Everyone was told, add value, put out content, be helpful. And
Yes.
so there was lots of that went out there, to the point that a lot of decision makers have been bombarded, confused, and overwhelmed. Gartner has done a study on this, and they have found there's a large, I don't remember the quite stat, but a large number, I think it's like over 60% of buyers are often confused because they're getting all these different sources of information, often coming from very reliable, credible sources, but sometimes it's contradictory. Thought leader A, Jim says this, Kathy says that, Michael says this, I'm confused, what should I be doing? So really a lot in terms of when you're creating content, it's really what decision makers are looking for, are connecting the dots. What is relevant to me? So should I be listening to John, or should I be listening to Kathy or Michael? So, help me make sense of what's relevant for me, what I should be focusing on, and also then it's not the sense making, but also the road mapping. What does this mean for me? What do I need to be doing? Business decision makers are really looking for that roadmap on how they can take and move their businesses forward. And that's particularly needed in this time now, where there are a lot of businesses that are really so focused on growth, but how do you focus on growth in times of volatility and uncertainty? So they really want that roadmap of, what do I need to do? How does this work for my company, my situation?
And you bring a very good point, because that's something that I've been in just thrown into the deep end, and because there's so much information out there, and how do you really distinct what, not only what's true, but also what really applies to you and your business in this particular moment that you're in. So would you, instead of just creating the content and co-creating content, would it be valuable to also put the content curation in your strategy as well as a part of the innovation?
So yes, I mean, as part of your strategy, that'll be your marketing and sales strategy, your go-to-market strategy. The content that you're going to be creating is going to be a critical component, because it is around that education, that sense making and road mapping is a critical part of the whole marketing and sales element. Again, the kinds of content that you're going to be creating and the approaches you want to be using, you want to be making it very much aligned with how decision makers make decisions. But that is a critical part, though, is not just creating the content, but really demonstrating what is it going to be meaning, how would you be working with that particular client, and what does it mean in terms of what the steps they have to take on how they're going to move forward.
So right now we've talked about the product innovation, we talked about the service innovation, we talked about the marketing innovation. So we have two more left, the organizational innovation and the process innovation. So I would like to spend a little bit more about how does the organizational innovation look like and how does it look like in particularly in a growing business space?
Great question. So in terms of organizational innovation, particularly I'm interested in is things like your, joint ventures, strategic alliances, co-creation. These are kinds of some of the things I think small and medium businesses really should be looking to do as a way to be able to get access to new clients and customers, breaking into new industries and new markets. Again, to determine how and where best to do so, it's really, again, around identifying what are some of the needs of those industries and those customers that you're going after, where there are gaps, and what makes sense in terms of where the joint ventures, the strategic alliances, co-creation could occur. So it could be around, let's say, providing, and this is where some of it may overlap, Kathy,
Mm-hmm.
because as part of, let's say, identifying that, let's say, there's a need for some kind of, let's say, overarching holistic solution. Let's say you see that clients using a professional services firm context, let's say you see that they have a need for marketing strategy services. They also need a bit of IT, marketing IT services as well. Again, this is where you may be looking at, okay, there could an opportunity to provide services and or solutions by working with another firm. You often see this where you might see an accounting firm that might align and work with an IT firm in terms of helping to automate some of the kinds of analytics and reporting so that the business has a one-stop solution to getting those financial analysis. And you've got the IT system to generate those kinds of reports with different levels. So you have an IT and an accounting firm joining together. So this is where the strategic, that joining of forces is serving to help deliver a certain kind of product, or it could be for a certain kind of service. So that's one example. Another example could be around co-creation, where you are working with one of your clients and customers, one of your clients, in order to create a solution for them that you can then roll out. So I've got a specific example where I have a market research technology company that I was working with. One of their solutions was they were working with one of their clients was a retailer
Mm-hmm.
and a supermarket grocery chain, and they developed some specific reporting analytics solution for that particular grocery retailer. So they work quite closely to make it very tailored to their needs and requirements. And then they use that solution and the processes that they use to create that reporting IT solution. And then they then proceeded to go to other markets. So they then have rolled it out to, I believe, hospitality, travel, and other subsegments within retail. So that's just an example of where you're working with a client quite closely to create a solution for them. But ideally, when you do so, you want to see how you can take that same solution with some other modifications and how you can use it to serve other customers and potentially other regions and other industries as well, in the case of this market research technology company has done. So that's an example of co-creation. But again, it's all going to be very much driven by your industry and customer needs. Really, we'll identify what are the opportunities of how you might do that kind of joint venture, partnership, alliance. And it could be something as you might even start as simple as content, joining together to create an event. So, the accounting firm and the IT firm, let's say they're targeting mid-market size engineering firms, they may join forces together because they're both targeting those engineering firms, and they might have some sort of one-day online summit, for example. So that's an example of, again, joining forces in terms of working with another organization to be meeting client needs.
These are fabulous examples. I especially love the whole one-to-one scaling into the one-to-many example. And that's the best way to come up with a new service or a new product that doesn't just benefit one particular company, one particular person, and you can roll it out to multiple different people can benefit from it. I love that example. So we talked about the organizational innovation. How about the process innovation? How does that look like? Is that the processes within the company or the
Yes.
processes as a
When we talk about process and system innovation, it's really around the processes and systems within your organization to better meet the needs of your clients and customers. So you might be modifying some of the processes that you have around, let's say, order and fulfillment, for example, making some changes so that it's more seamless and more easier for your clients so that they can do everything from making the purchases to getting the invoices, making inquiries. So process and system innovation is really about really trying to deliver around, when we're talking around customer service, customer experience, making sure that the processes there are really meeting the service experience requirements, service levels that your clients are looking for. Because quite often they may have certain expectations in terms of restoration time. So if we're talking, let's say you're a technology company or a telecommunications company, they may have very stringent requirements in terms of how quickly service faults get restored, customer communications back to their customers are made when there are issues, when there are faults, restorations. So you may need to be modifying some of the processes within your organization to give the level of service and customer experience that your business customers are expecting.
Do you have an example of a recent process innovation that one of your clients had?
Actually, one I do have, there was a law firm that I was working with, and they ended up wanting to be better able to improve some of the response times that they were having back to some of their clients. And so they implemented some service level assurances for their clients. And so they instituted policies that for certain kinds of cases, that in terms of on these certain matters, that there would be response times within specific levels. And they also improved the channels in terms of providing an online component, whereas previously it was all via phone. They developed an online response portal that clients could be using as part of when they needed to get immediate, faster responses. They developed an online channel to help facilitate that, to making sure that they were adhering to, for some of their core key growth clients, they were adhering to some of these revised service level assurances that the clients wanted to have.
And how were they able to identify this? Is this again going back to the whole listening and the data gathering from their current clients, so they were able to identify that this is what they need to focus on?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of this all goes back to listening, because when you're doing your listening, you want to be doing your listening really, again, there's really kind of from two perspectives. You got your listening in terms of broad, your expectations, your requirements that we're thinking at a broader business, almost strategic level. But then often you want to be getting that kind of, particularly when we're dealing with the likes of IT, technology scenarios, where you want to get it from an operational perspective in terms of that more transactional, in terms of day-to-day interactions. You want to be getting feedback from that level and understanding where are things falling off, not being met. So really in terms of getting that client listening, and again, Kathy, this is something we can go into. I do workshops on this, but you want to be understanding from that decision maker level in terms of those broad, I guess, strategic kinds of things, but then also from an operational, in terms of what are the times for handling complaints, issues. If you're IT and you've got your systems go down, so system restoration, getting feedback on how those systems are working and where things are falling off. You definitely want to be putting in feedback mechanisms, listening to your complaints, talking to your frontline staff so you can know where those modifications have to be made.
And when businesses are implementing this in their planning and in their innovation process, is there anything that they should be careful of when they're trying to put that in their and apply this in their own business? Are there any common misconceptions and mistake that you see them making as they're going on this process, on this journey?
I think it's very important, as part of your overall planning, whether we're talking the strategy planning as well as action planning, because a lot of this is going to be around turning, your strategies and your prioritizations into actual actions, which might be bigger projects around developing new products and new solutions, or it could be around making some of the operational changes, processes. It's very important that you get that. You're getting buy-in and input from those that are going to be doing a lot of the implementing and the doing. It's very important that you're making sure that those middle level staff, frontline staff, those that are doing the doing, they get input and buy into it, because they often can give you a lot of that granular, detailed heads up of what's required. Oh, we're going to develop a new solution, for accounting and IT systems so that we can co-market. There may be a number of considerations in terms of technical modifications that might have to undertake and occur. And so getting that buy-in from those who are the implementers of doing the doing is very important, because they often bring to light what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the roadblocks that you can have when you're trying to, merge data systems together, or you're introducing new processes? They can get into some of the minutiae. There could be certain legal requirements, regulatory requirements. There could be technical issues in terms of, or, system compatibility. And so it's really getting and teasing out some of those issues, because that can really have an impact on whether it's feasible, whether it's not feasible, what's the timelines that are going to be involved, because there may be some of these hurdles which you haven't thought through from a strategic standpoint. Yes, it makes a lot of sense as part of a growth strategy to develop this new solution, but to be able to execute it. For example, how do you price, developing the pricing for when you're creating a new product offering that involves various components. Insurance would be a good example. That can get, complex. So working through some of these complexities around some of the execution is very important.
So getting the buy-in from the people who are going to be implementing, and making sure that you have those types of conversations with them to see where could be the roadblocks while you're trying to implement. Okay. Yeah, and I think also change management as well, because anytime you're bringing something new into the company, anytime you're innovating, there's going to be a little bit of a resistance, a little bit of a reluctance to go onto a new system or a new product or a new service. So figuring out how to manage change, that could be another obstacle as well, right?
Yes, that definitely can be another obstacle that you're going to have to address, particularly when you're undertaking, some of your bigger growth initiatives around developing new solutions. If you're looking to expand and going into new markets, those kinds of scenarios, if you're potentially going to be doing aligning, working with another organization, or if there's an imminent a merging and acquisition of a new company that's coming part of yours, that is where often, there a lot of change management may be required, for which you really may need to get a third-party subject matter specialist to help you with some of those elements of that change management, which might be from a process and systems point of view, but there's also the whole people component, because it's often from a people component where that can be a challenge. But change management definitely is a critical piece that needs to be considered as part of your growth strategies. Yes.
Michael, this has been absolutely fabulous. You gave us a lot of food for thought, a lot of it. But one thing I always like to ask all of my guests that come to this podcast is, what is one tangible step that someone can take back to the business this week if they want to go and implement this new innovation process?
Kathy, everything starts with listening. So my recommendation would be for SME leaders, to gather up your leadership team, schedule a meeting, and let's get in the room. And first, get a list of who are your core customers, those core clients and customers that really keep the business going, that are the bulk of your revenue. Start there. Make a list of who they are. Do you know who the decision makers are as they are today? What are their priorities? What are they trying to achieve? What are their challenges? Can you answer those and start from there? Because if you are having gaps in terms of answering any of those, in terms of who they are, what are the priorities, what are the challenges, then that's where your research, that's where your listening needs to start. And then I would say, so having that bit of that workshop session, number one, to see what the landscape is. And then secondly, start the conversation with some of those key decision makers to really get a good understanding of what those priorities, requirements, and what are those objectives and challenges are. So those would be the two things. So get your team together and workshop to see who are our key customers, what do we know about them, and where are the gaps. And then secondly, start scheduling those conversations with those decision makers.
Great. Michael, where can our listeners get in touch with you?
So listeners can get in touch with me by going to my website, listeninnovategrow.com. So that's all lowercase one word. And there'll be lots of content that talks about how to listen, innovate, grow in a B2B context, as well as talking about the various services and how potentially can work with your company to help you acquire, retain those business clients and the growth that they seek.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. It's been good fun.
We covered a lot of ground here, and I hope you found this as enlightening as I did. Michael gave us an excellent blueprint and examples of how to actually innovate in your business. And I hope that you're going to use this in your strategic planning, in your planning process, because I'm certainly going to use that with my clients, trying to figure out how we can listen to the market that they're serving and how we can actually innovate in the business so that business can do so much better. And hey, listen, I know we covered a lot of ground here. So that's why I suggest that you look at the show notes, you look at the timestamps, and use it as you need it as you go through this process. That's going to really help you figure out where you are in the process and what are the next steps. You can also go on my website, newcastlefinance.us, and look at the blog post for this episode there. It's going to have the summaries of all these topics that we covered so that you can read it and reference it later as well. You can find the link for the blog post in the show notes of this episode. I hope this is valuable to you. And as always, before I go, I do have a favor to ask. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcast, if you could please go to the show, tap the number of stars that you think the show deserves, because it really helps other business owners find us as well. Thanks so much. Until next time.